Welcome, everyone, to the Who's Next Football Recruiting Podcast. I am your host, Brian Smith, and I am the publisher of Inside the Knights on Fan Nation, powered by Sports Illustrated. This is going to be a featured list of the top prospects from the state of Florida, specifically in Central Florida, and allow me to define exactly what that means. First off, we're going to start on the West Coast all the way over in St. Pete, and we're going to move all the way over to the East Coast in Cocoa. It's kind of that generic area, all the cities, all the towns in between. As far as a north-south parameter, it does not, very important here, does not include Sarasota, Bradenton, any of that area there. Going over to the other coast, it'll take care of part of the Treasure Coast, but very little of it. I'm not really worried about Vero Beach and some of that. That's kind of its own area. Now, Orlando, Lakeland, Tampa, Plant City, all the towns in between are areas that I'm really talking about here. There are a plethora of players. Some people know about a lot of them, some don't. Some play at smaller schools, some play at big traditional schools like a Popka or Lakeland, and I will get to each of those. The other thing to note here, this is only class of 2022, no underclassmen. And these are players that I have scouted in one way, shape, or form, most of which I have seen play live. And as I go through the list, each player I will denote if I have seen them play live. With that being stated, let's get started. First up on the list, Gabe Dindy. He is one of the best players in the country, and the defensive lineman from Lakeland High School needs no introduction. He has offers galore, and he's down to primarily 4 schools. He is down to Oklahoma, Ohio State, Texas A&M, and UCF. Most people expect him to pick Oklahoma because he is originally from Louisiana, not Florida. That's where he was born, but his family has very strong ties to the state of Oklahoma and the University of Oklahoma. We'll see where he goes. As it relates to his talent, this is a young man that I did a feature story on not all that long ago, and it was for one reason. Not anything to do with talent, by the way. This is about off-the-field personality, work ethic, desire, leadership. He's incredibly gifted. No question about that. Dindy is a big-time player. But when you add all those other attributes, that's what gets you over the top. And that is why I have Gabe Dindy is not only the number 1 player here in Central Florida, but in the state overall. Because if I'm building a program, and this is how college coaches look at it, who is going to be the face of my program? If it's not a quarterback, which it often is, and you're looking at a defensive guy, you can put Gabe in front of a reporter. You can put Gabe out there after a game talking to everybody. He's not going to embarrass your program. He's going to promote your program. Further, when I was at a practice recently, Gabe was a young man that went out of his way to kind of show a younger player how technique worked. When coaches were talking, he was listening, and he would pass along information. He's very consistent. And even the thing that all the big guys really hate, when Lakeland ran sprints for conditioning, Dindy was running as fast or faster than guys that weighed 40, 50 pounds less than him. That is not normal. And for those that do not know, Lakeland High School, where Dindy attends, is one of the most tradition-rich and just absolutely loaded with athletes program that you're ever going to find in Florida. They have state championships. They're consistently good. And this year is no different. This is a program that could make noise in the 7A playoffs again. And he was running with guys, again, much smaller than him and running like a deer. This is a special football player. Moving on to number 2, this is a player, unlike Dindy, not only because of position, but everybody knew about Dindy when he was a freshman. Like, he was on their state championship team starting along the defensive line, as scary as that is, as a freshman. Jayden Gibson plays for West Orange High School on the north side of Orlando. And he's grown into his body. He's very thin. He's very spindly, but he's starting to get stronger. He's starting to get bigger. 6'5 and a half, 6'6", 190 pounds, and he's really starting to mature as well. As far as his talents, there are 2 or 3 things that he does and does well consistently that changes how teams have to defend him, or at least try. Again, this is a very long kid. He has long arms. He kind of looks like a 2-guard you would see in the NBA based on how his build is. And that is very difficult. Most corners are 6 foot, 5'11", somewhere in there. So they're already at a size disadvantage. Gibson also does 2 things that give them a lot of problems. Natural timing, with high pointing the football. You hear that term a lot. I know it's beaten to death. There's a reason. It's vital. If you can catch fade balls in the back of the end zone and catch them in contested situations, you really don't need to have a tremendous quarterback. It lowers the chances of not scoring points, beginning and end of conversation. Gibson is tremendous at this. And again, he's 6'5.5", 6'6", so it's not surprising. But the timing that goes with it when he's being bodied up by somebody who knows he probably can't really run with him and beat him up and body him up, so he's just going to do anything he can and interfere with him. A lot of times refs just give up and they don't call it. Gibson's strong enough, believe it or not, with his wiry frame to take the football away from guys. And he's also capable of doing one other thing, and that's being a good route runner. He's developed consistently just through the spring, like February, March, April, all the way into July. And he dominated at the opening out in California, and that is something that is a very good testament to his skills. I'd noticed him getting better and better, and although I wasn't with him on the West Coast, some of my friends were, John Garcia, etc., from Sports Illustrated, and they all said the same thing. He was very good out there. Here's the key. When you see a kid that has the light go on like that, and he has the natural skills that he does, and then finally he's starting to mature, and he's understanding all the things that come at him, that's when you have a special prospect. Jayden Gibson, to me, is the second best prospect in Central Florida because of all those combined traits. You can't teach height. You can't teach hand-eye coordination. Those are given. And now the work ethic and the understanding of what's going on around him has taken place because he went from no offers to over 30 offers, and he has SEC, ACC schools, you name it, they're coming after him. This is a prospect that can pretty much go where he wants. The only couple visits that he's taken, officially anyway, are to Baylor, and I believe the other one is Miami. But Gibson is a kid, when I spoke to him recently, he really didn't know where he was going to go. He's going to take more trips, and his decision could come much later. Like Dindy, he's a player that's uncommitted and has so many options, it's probably overwhelming for him. So Jayden Gibson may not be as highly ranked by some other people, but I've seen him so many times and had the opportunity to scout him that I look at him a little bit differently than some other people. So if you haven't seen him, go watch his junior film. It'll be helpful. But what you see on junior film, while good, is not even going to be close to what he is now. And that's just an advantage of where I live. I'm in Central Florida as well, so I've seen Jayden play probably a half dozen times since January. So keep that in mind. Next up on the list, this is a player that I personally like as good a natural pass rusher, but he's also been taught very well as there is, and that's Mario Eugenio. He's from Gaither High School in Tampa. The first two kids that I listed, I have as a 1. A 1 is the highest grade you're going to get from me. Eugenio is next on my list, and he's a 1.5. There's a handful of these kids. Mario is the classic, I'm going to find a way guy. A couple years ago, he was under 200 pounds. He got up to just over 240, and he's kind of bounced out in that 235, 240 range now. And his hand skills at combating the offensive lineman, fantastic. He trains at Trench Academy in Tampa, the same place that I go to the gym and work out. And that's how I got to know him. I was the first person probably to interview him. But he's a kid that also just has natural feet. He could have been a tight end. He could have been a guy that played linebacker. He is a natural athlete in space. He's committed to the University of Michigan, and they got a really good player. I think he has a chance to at least be a first-year contributor for the Wolverines, if not a player that starts in their quote-unquote speed package, NASCAR package, whatever you want to call it, when it's 3rd and 8 or the last play of the half, and it's just all pass rushers in the game. How he adapts to being a run defender as a freshman, I'm not sure, but I guarantee you he will be better than many of the players they have on the roster from day one at just being a pass rusher. It's his ability. That's just what he does. He's got, I believe, 30 sacks over the last 2 years and rushing the passer. And he's playing in Tampa, and he's playing against big boys, so I think that it's pretty clear that he can get it done. And he just wants to work. He goes to every camp he can, whether it's rivals, whether it's Under Armour or whatever, doesn't care. Mario Eugenio loves competition. That's something else, like I mentioned, with some other guys, you may or may not see their ranking where you think. This kid's attitude is part of his ranking. Mario is a very special player, and he's earned it. That's why he's ranked so high by me. Moving on, this is just kind of alphabetical from here along this list, but this is another kid from Lakeland High School that plays, sadly for opponents anyway, at Lakeland High School alongside Gabe Dindy. It's not even fair. Keanus Thompson, defensive end, 6'4", 260. He's a young man committed to UCF. He was at about 240 to 245 last year. Lakeland plays him on both sides of the ball like they do Dindy, but he's a quiet kid. He's definitely an introvert, doesn't do a lot of interviews or anything. And the best way to kind of describe him is silent assassin. He does what he does. He's very physical once the whistle blows. But he has great hand technique. And in the same vein as Eugenio, he finds a way to get to the quarterback. Now, the thing that I want to see with him, because he's played a little bit inside, a little bit outside, what is his position going to be? He went from that size at 240, 245 last year to when I went to Lakeland's practice, he told me 260. He looked really good. But is he going to grow into a 3 technique? I don't know. Does he want to play that? Probably not. How does that work out? To be that elite guy, he could easily be the 3rd player in the state of Florida, really, not just Central Florida. Him and Mario are kind of right there. Just depends on how you want to look at it, flip a coin. But I like Mario definitively because I know this is what he is, pass rusher. Keanus, then again, he could end up being better because if he really accepts playing inside part of the time, at least, if not full time, the hardest thing to find in football are interior, keyword here, interior defensive linemen that rush the passer. Maybe that's Keanus. I don't know. He has to accept it. He's going to play it a little bit, but I could tell from talking to him that was not his preference. He enjoys being on the edge, and he does it very well. The thing about him when he's coming off the edge, he doesn't always just go to the outside, try to run the loop. That's not what he does. He will break down, stay low, get skinny. He will shoot the B gap just the same as he will try to go outside the offensive tackle. And if he's playing inside and has a chance to go to the A gap or go into the 1, he could play nose guard in 3rd and 6 or something like that. He's a threat to go straight through the A gap. And he sometimes will fake, sometimes he'll just go through it, sometimes he'll use a move, slap rip, whatever it may be. Very technical for a young man. Upside is extremely high. UCF got really lucky in the sense that he looked at them like everybody else. Not every kid will do that with a non-Power 5 school, but the way they're recruiting is like a Power 5 school. Keanus at Alabama, Texas, Miami, Florida, numerous programs offered him. UCF got a great player, and I think he'll play very, very early there, and he would have played early at Alabama, Clemson, or anywhere else he would have went to. Again, 245 to 260, still looks lean. This kid is a very talented football player. So keep in mind that his upside is tremendous. It's just up to him. He can be as good as he wants to be. The next kid I want to talk about is C.J. Hawkins. Now, this is a rare player in terms of how I have him ranked, what he's done in the past, and where he could, keyword here, could go. I have him ranked higher than anybody in the country. I live in Tampa, so does he. I've seen him play more. I know him. I know his personality. I know his coaching staff. I know Dominic Sayo, etc. He was at Jesuit a long time ago when I used to be around seeing him there, and now he's at Berkeley Prep, and he's coaching this young man. Hawkins came up as a basketball player. Just because he was a hooper does not mean that he was a player that couldn't transition, because he already proved that he could. He caught a few passes last year as a tight end. In a traditional style offense, they run a lot of power. He only caught like 2 or 3 passes, but you could just tell the way he ran, natural hands, the way he catches the ball away from his body. This is a young man that had a lot of potential. This year rolls around for spring. He plays for Team Tampa. Did very well immediately. Rocco Becht was a quarterback for them. He's committed to Iowa State. I'll talk about him a little later. But this is a player that just ran routes like a receiver, and he's 6'5", 6'6", something like that. He told me the other day he's 225. I expect him to be 240 to 250, and I'm not saying that he's going to be an automatic college All-American right away because he's still learning the game, but his ceiling is just absolutely through the roof. I think 24/7 originally had him as the 36th tight end, which is laughable. Excuse me. But at the same time, I understand a little concern about lack of experience. Again, though, I get to see him play live. I know their program. I live here at Tampa. I evaluate not just the player that I see on the gridiron, but I see him play 7-on-7, how he acts, who interacts with him, his personality, what he does after a good play, what he does when he thinks he should get the ball, etc. He's more mature than a lot of kids his age with his physical skill, and he's a kid that's going to stick it out. He also confirmed with me he's going to play basketball after football season's over, and he's going to play through the winter. A lot of kids would just quit and go to UF in January. He's committed to the Gators. He wants to play it through. This is a young man that's got commitment to him. I value that very, very much, and that's a reason that I have him so high. So the Gators get a really good player in Hawkins, but there's something else to note about him. It's a unique position now, this flex tight end kind of thing. They'll probably use Hawkins out wide as much, if not more, than what Berkeley Prep does, and that's a conservative answer. It's almost a lock that they will. And the Gators have recruited quarterback well. That will maximize his potential to be not just good, but elite somewhere down the road. Like, again, he's played 1 year football, blah, blah, blah. Don't let that fool you. Some guys just were gifted, and this young man is one of them. He fits the profile with a long, lean frame. He looks thin. I mean, very thin at 225. What a great problem to have. So just think about Hawkins in that offense with all the speed that Florida can get at running back, at wide receiver, and now he's going to be one-on-one the vast majority of the time against the safety. Good luck. And good luck to anybody that's a tight end that's going to be trying to compete against him too, because he's a very special talent. So the next kid I want to talk about is what I would call a bull in a china shop. That would be Zane Durant. Zane plays at Lake Nona in Orlando, Florida. It's on the south side of the city. And he is one of the most unique kids and most difficult to grade as a prospect. Here's why. The other day when I spoke with him, I'm standing there talking to him. I said, "What do you weigh now?" He looked a little bigger. He said 6'1.5", 260 pounds. Swelt kid. He's absolutely powerful. Plays defensive end / outside linebacker for his high school. He's committed to Penn State, and he told me that he's going to play, quote unquote, everywhere along the defensive line for them. On 3rd and 8, he might be inside. Kind of like Keanus, he's a kid they can move around. This is a young man, though, that I really don't know how to peg him. Like, you want to write down in the bio, hey, he plays tight end, he plays corner or whatever. He's an athlete, but he's a defensive lineman. That is very bizarre because you don't hear that very often. When I watched him play 7-on-7 for Certified Dogs, he played with Jayden Gibson and Nikai Martinez and a bunch of the other kids on this list. It was hard to understand why anybody would want to get in his way, because instead of trying to make guys miss, he just ran right at him. I mean, you can tell he's a traditional football player. He would catch a pass because he kind of played the H-back tight end role for them, and nobody really wanted to touch it. That's all you got to do in 7-on-7 technically. Nobody wanted to get in Zane's way, and that's why I call him a bull in a china shop. This young man has the skills to be a pass rusher in a multitude of ways, and Penn State got a steal. I know Miami really wanted him amongst other programs, but he wants to be a Nittany Lion, and he really likes it there. I expect him to enroll at Penn State. So good for the Nittany Lions. That's a big pickup out of the city of Orlando. Zane Durant, to another kid, and actually two, because they're twins, in the greater Orlando area. Seminole High School in Sanford is just north of the city, about 20 minutes, and they won the 8A state title last year. A big part of that reason why would be the twins, as they call themselves. They are Damari and Jakari, but which one you want to rank higher doesn't matter because they are literally twins. I can't even tell them apart. The only real difference to note here, one plays corner, one plays safety. Jakari plays corner, Damari plays safety, but it's the same player. They take away a lot of things that most high school teams simply cannot, and it's just raw speed and the ability to change direction despite being over 6 feet tall. They're only a little over 160 pounds, and they are, again, like kind of like Hawkins. They're basketball kids that have really kind of taken to football, and they're tremendous at the game of basketball. They can jump out of the gym. They're a highlight reel. If you're bored, go look them up on YouTube, Huddle, whatever you want. They can hoop. These young men have the ability to play a multitude of positions. You could use them on jet sweeps if you wanted to play them on offense, throw them screens, throw them bombs, whatever. But they prefer the defensive side of the ball, and finding corners and safeties with this kind of length, range, and jumping ability is not common. I don't really have a preference on which one is better because watching them play, it's, again, they're twins for a reason, but I would say they're both about the same level of instinctiveness, and they're both very talented. No clue where they're going to go to college. They visited numerous places, but with their talent level, wherever they go, they're going to make an impact. I have them ranked high enough that I would say that at the very least, they'll be multiple year starters at a major college. Just depends on where they want to go and how hard they want to work. I'd say both of them will end up in the 185, 190 range after being in a college weight program, but the physical skills that they have and the effort, both very high. That's why I have them ranked so high. Some other people may not, but I've seen them live. Very important. I've seen them run around and change plays that they shouldn't have been involved with. So both those kids play for Seminole High School as they try to defend their state championship this year. Sam Mccall, another kid from Lakeland, but he plays at rival Lake Gibson High School, not Lakeland High School. Wide receiver / corner / safety. I expect him to play safety or wide receiver in college. He's 6'2.5", 6'3". This young man, somebody I've seen multiple times. I saw him in the spring of his freshman year, and this is not a lie. When I saw him and he was playing receiver, I said to myself, who's this kid? Must be a senior in the fall. And I looked down at my program, and I'm like, either this is an error or this is going to be an elite prospect. I don't know which it is, but it's one of the two. Well, it was not an error. He was only going to be a sophomore, and he was the best player on the field that day, and they were playing against Ocoee. Mccall is unique because he's got a spider-like frame, meaning length. Similar to the Henderson twins, really, really long. I saw him a little over a year ago make a one-handed interception in the back of the end zone where he was trailing, sprinted to make the play, jumped off the incorrect foot, caught the ball with one hand, and toe-tapped with the other foot to keep his foot in bounds for the interception. One of the most incredible catches I've ever seen. With that being said, again, he could play on either side of the ball. Just depends. He's committed to Florida State. I don't know how solidified that may be. He was recently at Florida's Friday Night Lights. I know he's talked to South Carolina and several other programs as well. Alabama was recruiting him. Let's just see how it plays out. But Mccall, no question. Very, very good athlete. And after seeing him play several times, I have no qualms with thinking that he's one of Florida's best, regardless of position. This next prospect is probably the kid out of everyone left that I would like to see live. He just plays on the other coast, doesn't play for a program that gets a lot of attention, and it's difficult. Plays for Vieira. It's over in the Melbourne / Space Coast / top of the Treasure Coast area. But he's a big boy. He's a D tackle, 280, 290, somewhere in that range. And if you look at Jamari Lions in terms of his frame and what he can do, the first thing to note is he's just very stout in terms of how he's built. Watching his huddle film, he will penetrate in a multitude of ways, but I don't believe there's any one facet of it that he's just best at. He's just a good football player. With that being stated, how does he develop once he reaches a college weight program? How does this young man develop when he gets a defensive line coach that works specifically on being a 3 technique or one, whatever he decides? He could play either one, 3 technique, 1 technique, even being a 0 in a 3-4 defense. How does that transpire? It's hard to say because I believe he could get a little bigger, even faster as well, and he has the ability to be a penetrator. I think he would probably be better in a 1-gap scheme, but finding guys that can 2-gap is extremely rare, and especially if you can play nose guard. Jamari could probably do that, but he's not a 350 guy. He's going to be 300 to 310 probably, and being still, pretty good shape. If Lions goes to the right program and gets with the right fit, he could be a special player. His upside is very high, and I expect him to make a dent somewhere. You're not going to hear as much about him. He's not at Orlando Jones. He's not at Lakeland. He's not at Tampa Gaither. He's not at one of the programs that gets a little more acclaim. But Jamari Lions is a very talented football player. Speaking of raw talent, and this is a young man that I'd heard about, but I hadn't seen play. until this spring, and that's Amari Niblack. Amari is very gifted from an early age. When he was 9th, 10th grade, he was a 200-pound kid and very lean and very strong. He has no idea the physical skills that were bestowed upon him because it's just what he's always been. He's playing tight end now for Lakewood because they are so overloaded with talent. And even though they are a 4A program, the skill level they have on offense in particular is 8A. Unquestioned. Terrell Crosby, another young man I'll talk about sometime later in the show, is probably their biggest playmaker. He's just not the biggest guy. But in terms of college potential, there's a big difference between the two. Niblack, in my opinion, has the higher upside. He's about 6'4", 215, 220, somewhere in that range. He's played for multiple 7-on-7 teams. The thing you notice about him is his hand-eye coordination and his strength. Much like Jayden Gibson, he's so big, when he wants to high point the football, it's hard, and he's got the physique to do it. He's built, if you just walk into a room and you saw him there with other players in pads, you might say he's a weak side end. He's built like one. There are plenty of defensive ends that are 6'4", 220 getting ready to go into college, certainly. But he plays offense, and he can play tight end or wide receiver. Very unique. He is committed to the University of Alabama. He had offers from a plethora of schools, recently took a visit and pledged to the Tide. It'll be interesting to see what Nick Saban and the University of Alabama does with him. Does he stick at receiver? Do they move him around? Do they make him a flex? It's a good problem to have. If you're an Alabama fan, you'll be hearing about Niblack. That much I do know. The one other player that's in the greater Tampa area that's unique as a ball skills guy, and they actually played some together on 7-on-7, would be Greg Gaines. He plays at Tech High School in Tampa. I've seen him play numerous times. Great kid, great personality, and his ability to make clutch plays, time in the game, third down, etc., is just tremendous. He caught a touchdown in a 7-on-7 game earlier this year against Team Tampa, and quite frankly, it was the last play of the game, and Team Tampa should have won. He jumped over two guys, caught the ball in the very back of the end zone, got a foot down, and scored. It was just one of those moments you're like, holy cow. It was an NFL-level play. He does those kinds of things, and he's just clutch. He can make the catch. He ate up Phillip Raleigh last year in a game against Bloomingdale. Phillip is now at Notre Dame, and he's a very talented defensive back. The ball skills when he's around other guys, though, for some reason, I don't know what it is, just different. Competition, some guys kind of lay down against it. Other guys, like Greg Gaines, rise. That's the difference. And it's why I have Gaines as rated as a 2, and this is a kid I think will be a multi-year starter. He has committed to Iowa State. This is a program that traditionally does not get a ton of playmakers out of the high school ranks. They'll get a JUCO kid or et cetera, somebody that they develop. Gaines could play early there. He could be a 3-year starter at Iowa State. It would not surprise me. They need help on the perimeter every year because that's a hard place to recruit to, small school in the middle of Iowa. They're getting a playmaker in Greg Gaines. He can take you over the top. He's not necessarily a pure burner, but he's fast enough, and his ball skills with people around him are tremendous. The next young man is one of my favorite players in Florida, and it's not, again, like a couple of these other kids, it's not just because he makes plays on the gridiron. It's due to his leadership and his maturity, academics, the whole 9 yards. Nikai Martinez, a Popka High School cornerback committed to UCF. Martinez does a couple of things well. Let's start about the physical here. First off, Martinez has the ability to break on the football out of a back pedal, as one would expect from a corner. The other thing that he does well is bait the quarterback, and that's instinct. And following Team Tampa around and following some of the other really good programs, SFE, etc., you get these cross games where you just know the skill position matchups are going to be good. The defensive talent for Certified Dogs, the team that he played for in Orlando, Nikai Martinez, was that corner they could do different things with. He could play off, he could play man, but he baited guys regardless. Didn't always make a pick, but when he would jump, you could just see it. Like, I got to the point I could just recognize what he was getting ready to do. He would be ready to jump a route and try to knock down a pass or get an interception. Very instinctive. His toughness, when he breaks on the ball, being physical and all that, is also noted. Apopka, where he plays, always been known as one of the most physically gifted programs in the state. Still true today. And he's a kid that understands what it's like to break on the ball, make plays, and do so in a manner that just kind of changes the attitude of Gabe's. DBs aren't always that physical. He'll tackle, take on players that are bigger than him to get to a wide receiver in a screen or running back in a screen. That's infectious. That is Apopka football. That's why the Blue Darters are usually really good on defense, if not the best defense in the state of Florida. It's attitude like that. As an underclassman, Nikai Martinez was a captain at one of the games I went to. Again, this is a big-time program in the 8A level. They send kids to major programs every year. They've got one of the best players in college football up at Georgia, Mr. Carter. He's going to be a first-round draft pick when he comes out. Remember I said that, Mr. Carter up at Georgia. But they have kids every year. Yet they march him out there for the coin toss as a junior. What does that tell you? Nikai Martinez is a little different. When I interviewed him recently, Martinez was talking to me. I said, what do you want to do this year? Like, we've talked about recruiting, you're going to UCF, blah, blah, blah. What do you want to do this year to kind of weave Apopka? And the answer he gave me was really, really surprising. This is something that's humbling and, quite frankly, great. You don't hear high school kids say the following very much. I want to leave a legacy. I want to make sure the guys that come after me know that, hey, this can be done. You can go to college. You can get this opportunity for free. Apopka is a tough town. A lot of the kids don't come from a whole lot. So getting a college football scholarship means something. So I understood what Nakai was talking about. And the point was taken well. If he can lead like he's done so far and then take it to another level, that ups not only his game, but his program's game. And it will also help UCF once he arrives with Gus Malzahn and the Knights. Again, I was very impressed with that. His maturity just in the last year or so has changed, and it's went up an entire level. Let's see what he can do this year. But he looked great in the spring game. He looked great last fall. This is a kid that started getting offers as a freshman. Ironically, Gus Malzahn offered Nikai Martinez during his freshman year when Gus was at Auburn. That's the kind of talent we're talking about here. So we know he can play. Could be a nickel, could be a corner. And he even mentioned in the interview that I had with him, hey, I'll play free safety. I'll do whatever, but just put me on the field. I'll make it happen. Another kid that is difficult for me to kind of really understand what's going to happen with him long term, because teams just kind of stayed away from him. He played with Team Tampa in 7-on-7, and he plays at Armwood High School, and that's Kai Stokes. He's an extremely intellectual young man, tremendous student, 6'2", 180, something like that, just wiry, just, those guys just naturally muscle, like even their forearms is ripped up. But he's a kid, pretty humble, makes plays, can run. He kind of fits the role of a big boundary corner, but he plays free safety because he's so smart, kind of read everything. But teams didn't challenge him very much when I watched him play. Maybe it's just because of bad luck. I just know how physically athletic he is, but I'd like to see him play more before I rate him any higher than I do. I've got him as a 2, meaning he's going to be a multi-year starter. He's committed to Ohio State. I think as a junior and senior, he'll start for the Buckeyes. That would be my projection, and I'm sure they would be happy to accept that. I also think he'll end up getting a great degree because, again, very highly motivated on the academic side. The other thing to note about him is he really wants to get better. He knows he's good, but he's not going to worry about, hey, the last game I did this or did that. He goes out to work. You can just tell by the way he warms up, the way he communicates. He's a very, very talented player. Impressed with his attitude overall, by the way. Again, that's my big sticking point. You'll hear that over and over again with the kids that I've seen. Kai's a kid I've seen play live several times. And quite frankly, there's no reason to believe that he won't be successful in whatever he does after he finishes playing football. Another kid that I would like to see play live, and he recently committed to UCF, would be Leighton Nelson. The offensive tackle at Boone High School is not your traditional just power player that was always big, etc. When I interviewed Leighton about a week ago, he sent me a photo while we were sitting there together when he was a sophomore in high school. He didn't look like anything other than just kind of a tall, goofy kid that was trying to figure it out, which probably is what he was. 6'5", 240 as a sophomore. Didn't start until the season had already begun, and he got into the season. And his first game as a starter was against Oak Ridge. Again, 6'5", 240. Now he's 6'6", 285, and you put a photo from then and now together, you wouldn't even necessarily know who it is. Completely changed his body, added 45 pounds, looks great, and he's played in a zone scheme, and he runs it very, very well. The first play on his huddle highlight is him going out to take on the corner on a look screen, just like a look pass, hike, throw it to the guy, get it out there as fast as you can, and it's a one-on-one. If the offensive tackle reaches him, I mean, coaches aren't going to tell the kids this, it's a bonus because it's a long way. And he did. He made it there, and he gave a clear avenue for the wide receiver. He has feet. That I can tell you. He's a basketball kid. Love the basketball kids. And he has the feet to play left tackle. He went from 0 offers. This is a great story. 0 offers in January to getting his first offer from the old UCF staff to eventually, in a 22-day period, gaining 18 Division I offers. That's crazy. But that's what's so nuts about football during COVID. A lot of guys weren't seen as much. Once his film really started circulating, it happened. He recently committed to UCF. He'd visited Pitt and Louisville and Miami and a lot of places. He really liked Florida too, but he decided to stay home, commit to UCF. And he's the kind of offensive tackle that I think could play pretty early, maybe after a redshirt year. He certainly has the zone steps down, and Gus Malzahn runs that type of offense. No reason to believe that Nelson won't be that guy that makes something happen. The next player I would love to see play live, but I have not. He is a rare kind of kid, defensive tackle that's 300 pounds, give or take, and he could one gap or he could two gap potentially, depending on the defensive scheme, and that is Bishop Thomas. Committed to the Knolls up in Tallahassee. This young man is about 6'2", 300, but he is not your normal 300-pound kid. Last year, they literally lined him up at Bishop Moore, extended from the line of scrimmage, not even traditional tight end, and threw passes to him. Not only did he catch it, he wasn't one of those guys that just fell down. He would try to make a move and get around somebody. Great athlete. This is the kind of kid that you don't see every day, and I'm curious to see what he does against higher level competition. Bishop Moore, I think, is about 3A, 4A, somewhere in there. If he can do those kinds of things at the high school level and he continues to develop, there's really no telling what he could do at Florida State. Tremendous upside. The next kid is a player that is also from Orlando Boone, the same high school as Leighton Nelson, and that's Jaquise Thomas. Jaquise is a kid that I've seen play, and he's unique because I don't know which side of the ball he's going to play for the Georgia Bulldogs. That's where he's committed. He looks really good. It's a strong safety / kind of a hybrid guy blitzing off the edge. And he also looks good high pointing the football or making somebody look really bad after he receives the football and makes a move. Great problem to have for the Georgia Bulldogs. I don't care what anybody says about his position now. Let's wait and see once he arrives in Athens. But Jaquise is a special talent because he can play multiple positions at a very high level. Again, Boone High School, Orlando, Florida. Jaquise is committed to the University of Georgia. Markeith Williams, another certified dog player, 7-on-7, plays for Evans High School in Orlando. Long, spindly kid, not quite as strong as a comparative point to Kai Stokes, but also very effective. Free safety is certainly the position that best suits him, but he could be a boundary corner in terms of his frame, etc. Another way to look at him would be similar to the twins from Seminole. He's that kind of kid, can really run, has the ability to get out in open space and make plays that you wouldn't necessarily think a free safety can, but he's still developing. I think his upside is pretty high out of all these kids. This is the last of the kids that I have on my list right here as a 2. And I would say that, I would say he's the highest one out of the 2s in upside because the frame can get bigger. He has long arms, good speed, good change of direction, all those things. But he's a player that really doesn't have a definitive role yet because teams probably stay away from him. From watching his film, there's some that go his way. But playing at Evans, they can kind of go away from him, etc. I expect him to have a big senior year, but I expect him to really develop once he reaches college. I don't know where he's going to go to school yet. He hasn't, definitively made that choice, but his upside is really, really high. Good kid too. Happy-go-lucky guy, kind of kid you want to be around. If you need a free safety, he's kind of what you're looking for in terms of the frame too. Certainly a lot to work with. The rest of these kids, I all have ranked a 2.5. That basically means it's a guy that can play Division I football, needs some kind of polish, needs to add weight. There's something that's not quite there, in my opinion, to rank them a 2 yet, but they could be, if not a 1.5. There's a few exceptions in here, like Miguel Maldonado. I'll talk about him second, just to give an example of the difference in what I'm talking about. But Jaquise Alexander, he's a corner at Tampa Catholic. I saw him on Saturday briefly. You talk about a kid, kind of like Nikai Martinez, that will bait somebody, throw you for a loop because he can break on the ball and he can play zone, he can play man, etc. Just instinctive. That would be Alexander. Not the biggest guy, 5'10", 5'11", somewhere in there, 170 to 180 pounds, but really quick feet, can break on the football. And for some reason, he hasn't gained a ton of recruiting traction the way I thought he would in terms of how like the media talks about him. He's got some offers like Florida and some other schools have, but you don't hear as much about it, which is weird. It's not like Tampa Catholic where he plays is any stranger to having recruits, because that would just definitely not be the case. Alexander, though, absolutely a young man that can play nickel. He could play corner. And if you really wanted to move him on the side, he could be a slot receiver. Very valuable player. Just to use an example, though, Alexander, there's no doubt about it, he's played football. This is what he does. I'm going to go out of order here just to talk about him. The guy that overall on this list that could make the biggest jump is probably the next, and that's Miguel Maldonado, the third Lakeland player I'm going to talk about. 6'6", 325, and he's a basketball player. Those things usually don't go together. But his feet are so good, not just from being a natural athlete the way he was born, but from hooping, that last year when he made his initial run as a football player, I'm watching his kick step, I'm watching him play in space, I'm watching him start as a double team with the offensive guard or the tight end, whatever, move to the second level, stay low, use his hips, drive into the next player, whether it's a safety or inside linebacker. And I'm like, he has been coached very well for a one-year high school football player. Transition that in your mind 2 or 3 years from now. This is total opposite from Alexander, who I just talked about. I know they're different positions, but like he's going to walk in and be a nickel somewhere. Like if he went to NC State as an example, he could start at nickel as a freshman. Wouldn't surprise me. Maldonado might need a year or two. Just kind of depends on how well he picks up scheme. Cannot teach the physical skill. Certainly can't teach 325. And his hand-eye coordination is good. Being a basketball player, his footwork is pretty darn good as just a natural athlete. And then he's been coached well at Lakeland High School. His upside is as high as any offensive lineman in the Southeast. Can't teach all the things that he has, and he's just starting to play football. Nobody talks about him. Committed early to UCF. I guarantee it, whether it's public or not, this will be a kid that some SEC schools make a run at once they watch his senior film. Lock that up. Guaranteed. It could be Georgia, it could be Arkansas. I have no idea. There are going to be some schools. But he's a kid that just loves UCF. He's committed, and the Knights got a very good one. Moving on to another player that is a lineman, but this young man is a different style of lineman. Traquan Alexander, offensive guard, Jesuit High School, Tampa, Florida. Power, direct, fierce. Those are some of the things that I would utilize in terms of how I have seen him play in the past. Seen him multiple times play live, and he's just massive. 290 to 300 range. Conservatively, he might even be over 3 bills. But this young man does what he's supposed to do as an offensive guard, and that's be a road grader. I have no idea where he's going to end up in college. I think he is quote-unquote under-recruited. And again, like some of the other guys that are linemen, you're going to hear me say this over and over and over and over again. College coaches want to evaluate offensive linemen face to face. COVID-19 destroyed that. But here's the problem. College coaches are the most stubborn human beings on the planet. They hate the word change more than they hate 4-letter words. They want to do it their way all the time, no exceptions. That's not how COVID-19 works. So these kids basically lost 2 springs, their junior and their senior springs, and they lost part, not all, but part of the camp circuit in May to early June. Kids had visits and this and that. They all wanted to do visits, but they didn't go to camps. So if a kid went on a couple of visits here or there or couldn't do it for whatever reason, they kind of missed out. Alexander fits that profile because I think he's a Power 5 player in terms of the traditional sense of what that word means. But at the same time, he doesn't have that many offers that I think he should. Look for him to gain some traction a little bit later this year because the talent is there. Now here's a quarterback, and it's the only kid that I put on the list as a quarterback because that's just such a hard position to grade. I might have a few more at the end of this year. And that's Rocco Becht. He plays at Wiregrass Ranch up in the northeast Tampa area. His dad played in the NFL as a tight end for the Jets. He played at West Virginia. Rocco is committed to Iowa State. He's got a little bit of a gunslinger mentality. He can run some read option. He's got a pretty good arm. But more than anything else, he's a football player. I know that term is often used, but he'll take a sack, he'll throw an interception, he'll do something he shouldn't, whatever it may be. He will come back on the next series like it didn't happen. He enjoys a challenge. Those are things that you need to have. Rocco is not the biggest quarterback. He's about 6'1", I would say. That doesn't really matter in today's world, but maybe that's one of the reasons not that many people rank him super high. I think he's pretty darn good, and I've seen him play live. I don't even know how many times playing for Team Tampa and for Wiregrass Ranch, but he's a kid that has a chance to fit. I mean, great fit at Iowa State where he's committed. To fit into their scheme, run spread, and make plays after the snap, whether it's ad lib or on time. I really like Rocco Becht. Moving on to the opposite coast, this is a kid that just always gets open. Always gets open. Ryan Black, Rockledge High School. I don't know why more people don't talk on it. Pretty good size. 200-pound kid, 6 foot. Maybe he's 195, but, in that range. Third down, 7-on-7, he's open. Mark it down. Didn't matter if he was playing against SFE. Didn't matter if he was playing against any other program in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, wherever. Ryan Black is open. At the end of the day, that's the stat that matters. Did you get open? Did you make the catch? Yes, indeed, Ryan Black did. Not ranked as high as he should be. Plays in a pretty good program. I don't know what it is. He's over there in the Space Coast area. I guess that's the reason, but he's an hour from Orlando. It's not like he's in Never Never Land, so he's definitely under-recruited. That much is a fact. TJ Bullard. This is the epitome of under-recruited. Committed to UCF, but he had hardly any offers from Division I programs, and certainly not as many as he should. I've seen Bullard play probably 4 or 5 times in some capacity, whether practice, 7-on-7, and things like that aren't needed for a kid like him. You just watch him practice, and it's over with. And I've seen him play live, I think 3 times, maybe 4 in pads. The best way to describe him long-term is a guy that you can move around. I'm not going to say positionless because it'll be strong safety or hybrid linebacker in terms of my opinion. But the football finds TJ, not TJ finds the football. If the ball goes up in the air and Berkeley Prep is on defense, you can almost guarantee that in some way, shape, or form, TJ Bullard will be there. I've got him ranked at 2.5 like some of these other kids because he needs more polish. But more than anything else, he just needs weight. He's 6 foot, 6'1", 185 pounds, chiseled. I mean, just absolutely chiseled. His dad was an elite football prospect a long time ago, and his name's Thaddeus Board. A lot of people know him by his name in wrestling, but I won't get into that. Thaddeus was a very highly recruited player, played at the University of Florida, could have went to about 40 schools, played for the Gators, played briefly in the NFL, and now a wrestler. Bullard's just the kind of player that personifies a wrestling mentality. I'll say that because every play is go at it. Every rep in practice is go at it. Even when they ran sprints, he acted like it was 3rd and 9, and he was the blitzing strong safety coming off the edge. Boom. First step is his best step. This is a young man that UCF has a chance to do something with in terms of moving him around, blitzing, playing over the slot. They could move him back on 3rd and 8. Maybe they drop him in coverage because he's so instinctive. Really good in pass coverage, which is the number one attribute you look for now in college football because everybody throws it somewhat. He can do those things. Nobody talks about him. I guarantee you I have him ranked higher than anybody else. But TJ Bullard is a very good prospect, and UCF got a good player there. Brandon Cleveland. This is a unique kid because he could play a multitude of positions as well. Another defensive lineman. I'm going to guess he's 275. He might be a little less. He might be in the 260s. Saw him yesterday at practice. He could move laterally. First and only thing I really wanted to see. The eyes do not lie. Seeing film's good. Don't get me wrong. Watching live from 5 feet away, no way around it. You either have the ability to really move laterally or you do not. For Cleveland, the answer is yes. 6'3", 275 is what I got him at. He might be slightly smaller than that, but he's in that range. And he's a kid that can really move, and he can pass rush. Where's he play? Kind of like Keanus Thompson or some of the other kids on this list, Jamari Lions, etc. Maybe Cleveland plays in, maybe he doesn't. It depends on what the Wolfpack need and what else they recruit. I just know he's a defensive lineman, and on 3rd and 6, it's good to have him on your side. Another Lakewood kid, Terrell Crosby. Speed. Behind you, touchdown. Those are the things you need to know. When I watched him play this spring, he played corner, then he played receiver, etc. I wasn't sure which position I liked him at, and I'm still not set. He can play either corner or wide receiver, but I do know this. He's going to run faster than the guy in front of him more oftentimes than not. Not many guys can run with Crosby. That being stated, let the college figure out the position. He was the best player arguably at a tournament early this year in March, and he's also been a guy that regardless of when he plays and regardless of the other team knows what the play is going to be, he still gets the ball. Him and Ryan Black are kind of that way. They just go about it differently. Crosby's speed makes him a home run threat on reverses, wildcat, screens, a short dig route, doesn't matter. He gets the football in stride from a wide receiver's perspective, that out in front, don't have to look back for the ball or anything so somebody can drill him. The first guy is probably going to be in trouble because he can move his feet and stop it and start, dead leg, jump cut, whatever you want to do. And then it's just about the afterburners. He can go. Look for him to rise up a little bit in the recruiting rankings this fall because even though Lakewood is a 4A school, he is a big-time player, and I don't think he's been evaluated well enough yet. We'll see. Preston Cushman, offensive tackle, plays Calvary Christian over in Clearwater, Florida, and committed to Ole Miss. He's really happy with his commitment. For anybody that asks, all the Gator fans, it really wasn't that close at the end. He really wanted to go to Ole Miss. I would tell you that from knowing Preston. He's not changing his commitment. Go ahead and throw that out there. 6'5", 280, 285, somewhere in that range. Committed to Ole Miss, and I think he could play left tackle, but he could play right. He's technically sound enough if you moved him inside. He could play guard. Kid that takes coaching well, yes sir, no sir, from a good family. All the things that you look for in a prospect. Again, social media, can you be in front of a microphone? Are you going to embarrass the program or are you going to promote the program? That's the same with every kid. Cushman's what you're looking for in that regard. That matters. Next up, talking about a guy that doesn't get enough respect. I don't know if it's because of his height or what it is, but I was pushing for him on Twitter for a long time. Like, why in the world doesn't this kid get more pub? What's the deal? He plays at Leighton Gibson, plays with other really good players. He's in 7A football, I believe. What's the deal? Jalen Glover, running back, 5'7", 195 pounds, Leighton Gibson High School, just committed to Utah. A bit of an upset. A lot of people thought he was going to Florida, but Florida is infamous over the last 3 to 5 years for losing running back recruits. I won't go into that too much, but Gator fans are probably gnashing their teeth now about their running back coach and his lack of recruiting prowess. Great kid in terms of just effort after contact, reading the hole, one cut and go. The school he picked is a great fit for him. Utah runs zone. They're similar to Iowa, for an example. They make one read and they hit it. The goal is to get at least 4 yards. And if you can make a guy miss, you turn into a big play. Simple as that. Over and over again, we are going to beat you up. That's what Utah does. Great fit. Glover had a game last year of over 300 yards. And to be honest with you, I don't think that up to that point he'd gained a lot of respect. But then Florida State and Florida and South Carolina and all these schools, oh, he's good. Did you not watch the film prior? For me, anyway, it was pretty obvious. And again, I was beating down the drum with him on Twitter. But now that he's committed to Utah, I'm curious, do more schools, especially if they miss out on somebody that they evaluated and liked more than Glover, do they come back around to him? And does Glover have an interest in any one of those schools? Really hard to say. But Glover is a kid that if he just stays healthy and he continues on this course, no reason to believe that he won't be a multiple year starter for the Utes. He's that good. Winston Griffin. Now, out of each player that I have on this list, and it's a long list, I probably know the least about him, but I disliked his film. I saw him play a couple of years ago, but wasn't paying attention to him specifically, so I don't really count that as a quote-unquote live evaluation. You need to watch the player over and over and over again right there. I was not paying attention to him. But the profile that he has to play defensive end in today's era is spot on. 6'4", 215, long arms, athletic, bends the hoop, goes around, dips his shoulder, gets under the offensive tackle, attacks the passer. That's what you want in your weak side end. That is what Mr. Griffin is. Raw? Absolutely. He's not refined. Needs better hand technique to destroy blocks. Otherwise, he's going to be getting a really sore chest, getting hammered. He does need to do that, but, the tools are there. Does he have the ability to play strong side end down the road? How much weight does he gain? Tough to say. 240, 250, I think, is a conservative estimate if he wants to play at that weight. Could play a little lighter and maybe be an outside linebacker, let's say if he went to Georgia or any of the other 3-4 teams. There's only a handful of them. Georgia, Alabama are the two most noteworthy, but I think that he could play in a 3-3-5 situation. Some teams run that now. Cincinnati does that. There are teams that utilize it in those hybrid situations where he might drop. He's athletic enough to do it. That's for definition. No doubt about it. But he needs to just refine himself. This is a kid that I have rated as a 2.5, meaning college starter, maybe a junior, senior, but he just needs time. And depending on the scheme, he could be a lot higher than a 2.5 by the end of this year. He could be a kid that's a 1.5, really quick. Can't teach the natural ability. Upside very high. Winston Griffin, defensive end, Edgewater High School. London Hall, this is a kid that transferred schools. Really long kid. I think he'll end up at safety at the college level. He played last year at Calvary Christian in Clearwater, but now he's at CCC, Clearwater Central Catholic. It's the tradition program over in Clearwater, Florida. 6'1", 6'2", somewhere in that range. Plays cornerback a lot, primarily a zone guy. I don't know if he can play man, and that's, for me, that's a yes-no thing. It's a checkbox. Did I see you play a lot of man defense? I did not. I won't rate a kid higher, especially if they're going to the SEC, unless they played man coverage consistently at corner. He did not. But he breaks on the ball, and a lot like Nikai Martinez, the way that London plays football, he was a kid that gets after it because of his brain, not just his natural footwork, his long arms, etc., has all the measurables. He reads the quarterback appropriately. He'll come off his main priority once he sees the ball go in the air and attack the football. London Hall probably doesn't have the value that some people might have if they played it. It's like just, again, an easy one. Lakeland High School, Apopka, West Orange, Jones, etc. But he can really run, and he has the ability to utilize a length. Can't teach those things. Be interested to see what Hall ends up doing in terms of a college announcement, because he's at Clearwater Central Catholic. They get a little more exposure, but it's not a huge school either. He needs to have a really good season again, but he could get several offers. Victor Jones, committed to the Nebraska Cornhuskers, Olympia High School, Orlando, Florida. It's on the west side of the city. Very respectful young man. He's a kid that I thought his highest upside was actually at corner. He's got good feet now. He's got really good feet. Wants to play wide receiver. He's determined to do it, so it is what it is. 6'1", 6'2", 175, 185 range. Can really change direction after the catch. And his ability to make plays in a multitude of ways means that Scott Frost is getting a kid that's not just going to be good somewhere down the road, but he might be able to use him as a freshman, even if he doesn't know the playbook all that well. Punt return, kick return, screen game. Nebraska's really good with that, and using him on double moves in the RPO game. Victor Jones has the ability to do each of those things, and he's the kind of kid, again, put him in front of a microphone, you're good to go. Nebraska getting a very good football player. Now, another kid that's leaving the state of Florida, but if you would have told me that Oregon State was going to get somebody out of Florida that was a prominent prospect, I would have laughed in your face. Melvin Jordan, linebacker, Clearwater Calvary Christian, committed to the Beavers. I don't know what happened there. At one point, I believe he was a Seminoles commitment. I have no idea what happened. I don't know the kid, but he is committed to the Beavers. This much I do know. Lateral ability, traditional will linebacker, kind of build, plays downhill, will hit you. How well he learns the passing game and all that, and all the coverage stuff, just like any other linebacker, is the question. No way to know until he plays college. You're completely guessing otherwise. Anybody that tells you they can really figure out what a kid's going to do mentally is lying. It's just not possible, because that's about effort in the film room. The physical schools are completely open to interpretation. I get that. But even though he's not a real big kid, he's maybe 6 foot, probably not. That's a kid that can run. Think of old school 1980s, early 90s Miami linebacker, or a kid that, just really undersized but can run, like played at West Virginia or something, just to put an athlete there. That's the kind of kid he is, and he's going to play for the Beavers. I bet he plays early. That much I know. I would love to know the backstory on that, but I don't know. Melvin, good football player, headed to the West Coast. Now, this next young man is also from over here on the western part of the state, and he's a transplant from the West Coast. Trent Ramsey was in Arizona less than 2 years ago. Now he is in Florida. He just transferred to Carrollwood Day School. They're playing him at left tackle. I saw him at practice yesterday. Looked good. Good vertical steps, but more importantly, again, I look at things from a horizontal perspective. Football field is 53 and a half yards wide. Need to use every inch of it. And they run some zone, they run some screens, different things where the offensive linemen need to get outside. Speaking of Carrollwood Day School, and his footwork was good. He looked much better than when I saw him in the spring game. He looked a little bit uncomfortable with the offense he was at when he was at Eastlake High School up in Tarpon. He's since transferred. For some reason, he looks totally different already. Really like the way Ramsey moved. Definitely is going to be a college player that can play guard or tackle. Kind of just depends on where he goes. It's just dependent on that. As far as recruiting, West Virginia, Cal, and Indiana, those are the 3 visits he took in June. I don't think he has a clue where he's going. He's a kid that's not worried about recruiting. He's worried about playing football. He's kind of a traditional guy. So Trent's a great kid, somebody I see a lot. He works out at the same gym as I do. Very good football player. This next young man is one of 2 players on this list that is making a complete transformation. And what I mean by that is not just changing position, but changing sides of the football. The other one I'll talk about very soon as well. But you just can't teach speed. Javon Robinson, I think, is a kid that could consistently run a 4.4 electronically if he was trained by a guy that, that just teaches 40. There's a lot of technique involved in it. Twitchy, speed, burst, change of direction. He went from playing running back / like an H-back / slot back in the very awkward offense that Apopka used to run, the single wing, to now he's transferred to West Orange and he's going to be a corner. Maybe they use him some on offense too. I don't know. I haven't asked. But all those twitchy type things are going to help him. He played corner during the 7-on-7 season for Certified Dogs. He had one of the best interceptions I saw all spring long. Came off his guy. It was an end zone shot. Guy's wide open. Boom. Put his foot in the ground. Not only picked it, he took it to the house the other direction. You talk about changing the game. It was impressive. Not many guys can run like him. Can't teach speed, folks. Can't do it. Speed is the name of the game in football, especially outside the tackle box. Jayden can really run. So no idea where he's going to go. First visit is in October to Washington State, but I imagine that he'll end up somewhere else, probably in the Southeast. It's just a matter of some teams seeing him play corner in actual game competition, which will start here in a couple weeks. But Jayden is a very special talent. Certainly has that ability. A couple of kids that are really unique in terms of their ability to run back-to-back. Jamari Robinson, a little taller than Jayden, plays at Cocoa High School, another one of those tradition-rich programs over on the east coast of Florida. He's just going to put my foot in the ground, and if you don't get your hands on me at the line or have somebody helping you over the top, I'm going to run by you. First step speed is about as good as it gets in the state of Florida. Boom, he's gone. Doesn't have a ton of offers. Curious to see what he looks like early on this season, watch his film, etc. Cocoa plays an elite schedule. They're playing like Seminole and some other teams that are up 7, 8A. This is a 4A school in Cocoa. They do not fret about their schedule. They play 4 or 5 teams that at their each individual level has a chance to make a run at the state title. They do not care. Here we come, try and stop us. That's their mentality, which I love. And he's one of their studs. Robinson has the speed. He's a kid that can take a shallow crosser and make 2 or 3 guys miss, come back across the field and score. He's that guy that drives a defense bananas. One-on-one, nightmare. You've got to get your hands on him at the line of scrimmage. Since I talked about him, I might as well talk about the other kid from the same program, O.J. Ross. He actually plays running back for Cocoa. They're not deep at that position right now. I actually think that much like his teammate, wide receiver is the best bet. Does he play slot or outside? I don't know. He's not quite as tall. Maybe it's slightly thicker than Robinson. But O.J. Ross plays running back for Cocoa, and he's a guy that is happy to take it, run with it between the tackles. He's a tough kid, even though he's like 5'10", 165, 170, somewhere in that range. Doesn't bother him. Toughness still counts now. Just speed doesn't do it, even though that's probably going to be the main theme for him at the next level. I expect him to transition to slot with maybe a few carries at running back wherever he ends up going. But quickness, boy, I tell you what, OJ can really make people miss, and that's a very big part of his game, much like Robinson. They put him next to him, maybe they'll have some packages at Coco. I'll be interested to see what they do. That's a bona fide problem right there. Another kid, excuse me, that has speed, and he's one of the fastest kids in the state. Chandler Smith, wide receiver out of Bishop Moore Catholic. I've heard a gazillion different opinions on him. Needs to be more physical, doesn't do this well, like route running. This great kid, raw speed, absolutely can fly. He's one of the fastest kids in the state and has the ability to make plays over the top. I'm not sure just how twitchy he is in short space. I haven't seen him play live, and before I really comment on that, I'd prefer to see live or see a ton of film. I haven't. He's been hurt quite a few times. He needs to stay healthy. That's the other thing. But Chandler Smith has the speed to make it happen. The Gators took him. He's committed. I expect them to use him as a perimeter receiver, try to get him in one-on-ones, or draw a safety away so they can run the ball. Kind of a traditional NFL concept. Make you look at him from a speed perspective. Chandler has that speed that few do, and despite his injury history, the Gators and several other teams offered, I expect him to play, but maybe not right away. He needs to get a little stronger. Great kid, though, and he's got a guy you root for. Vinson Snead, another kid from Orlando, but he plays at Winter Park, which is a city within Orlando, actually, right in the heart of the city. Committed to the University of Tennessee, really athletic kid, plays off the edge. He's super high energy. Every play, he's bouncing around. He has the mojo. This is a kid that is extremely long. He's 6'4", 254, but also has the ability to play physically downhill. I'm not saying he's a two-gap defensive end or something like that. I'm just saying that he's a kid, stand-up edge guy or a wide 4-3 guy on the end. That's his place. But you could drop him into coverage. He'd be okay. Now, I'm not saying that's a priority, but at the same time, he's a young man that has the ability to play in space at least a little bit. You could zone blitz with him or something like that, maybe 5 to 8% of the time, something like that, kind of mix it up. But his forte, straightforward, trying to beat the guy in front of him with a pass rush move, and he can bend and get around the corner. The athleticism is there. Tennessee is doing a pretty good job in Florida, and that new staff coming over from UCF, at least they know some of the kids in the area. This is a good pickup for the Vols. Really good player. A kid that's also from Orlando that doesn't get a ton of attention, his dad actually played in the NFL, is Brian Thomas Jr. His dad played, I believe, for the Jets, and it's hard to find defensive ends, especially with the lineage of a father that played in the National Football League, but hey, whatever. He's not that highly recruited, but he plays at Foundation Academy. Extremely small school. Pass rusher, a little undersized, kind of to look at him and what he's done, watching his film, etc. The comparison I would make is he's the kind of kid that Louisville would take, maybe not ideal height. He's 6'2" to 6'3", but he has quickness. He knows how to use his hands. Again, his dad played in the NFL, so they're talking about this stuff all the time in training with hands and footwork, setting up moves, etc. Good kid, good academically, lineage. Not as many offers as I would expect, though, and more importantly, just from my world, not respected well enough. He shouldn't just be on a Central Florida recruiting list. He should be on a Dixie list, like the entire Southeast. He has that kind of talent, but he's a kid that still needs to refine more, put on a little more weight before I would feel comfortable moving him up. I just know based on his background and meeting him, he's a young man that probably isn't going to have a problem with that. He just wants to play football. The next kid is the biggest player on the list, bar none. Tawfiq Thomas, defensive tackle, Gaither High School, Tampa, Florida. Give or take, depending on what he had to eat that day, 340 pounds, 6'3" to 6'5", somewhere in that range. Big body. He's the one kid on this list without question, that could be a zero technique, meaning he could play nose guard, line up directly in front of the center, and demand a double team. You cannot have Tawfiq running into your quarterback. Bad news bears. So, what does he do? Does he end up playing nose? Does he play in a one tech? Where does he go to school, etc.? Wherever he goes, I expect them to utilize him in a variety of ways. Even if they're not a 3-4 team, goal line situations, to mix it up, blitz package, whatever, they'll line him up in that zero technique. He's so unique size-wise, it's inevitable. Now, his offer list is pretty extensive, but Iowa State and Kansas got the first couple visits. He's visited Michigan, plays at the same high school as Mario Eugenio. Where does he go? I have no idea. I haven't talked to him in a while, but I've seen him play. Really hustles. He's a young man that, despite his size, will get out on a screen and run. You just don't see guys at his size do that. So he has some upside, needs to reshape his body, definitely needs to lose weight and gain strength. But you can't teach the effort, nor can you teach the natural body type. This is a kid that's going to make somebody happy at the college level. Demario Tolen recently transferred to Dr. Phillips. He is committed to LSU, another Orlando prep prospect. Linebacker, 215, 220, something like that, recently committed to LSU. Really liked the campus and the visit when he went there, and he's sold on the Tigers. The thing that I want to see more from him is him play in the box against the run. That's something rare for me to talk about. He can run and cover. I need to see how he does physically, because to play at LSU, you're going to play against the following every single year: Florida, A&M, Alabama, Ole Miss. That's pretty tough right there. You add Auburn in, etc. That's a lot of teams that are going to run inside zone, and or they're going to run power, bring a backside tackle around, etc. If he's going to play at LSU, I'm curious to see how well he takes on the run this year, because you're going to face 325-pound offensive linemen. And that doesn't sound fun to me, but okay, if you want to play linebacker, that's what you're signing up for. Can he do that? If he can, his speed and athleticism will take over from that point forward. Tolen was offered a scholarship by tons of schools. He could have stayed home, went to UCF, could have went to play for Gators, etc. He decided he wanted to go to Baton Rouge. So we'll see what Tolen does long term, but the athleticism is certainly there. Here's another kid committed to Iowa State. This is a really unique trend. I think they have more commitments on this list than the Gators. Now, who would have thought that? Xavier Townsend, slot receiver, 5'11", 180. Saw him a couple days ago. First step explosiveness. Plays running back for Dominic Sayo in Berkeley Prep. Plays a little slot. He can play in the Wildcat. Whatever it may be, bottom line is this: the first defender rarely makes contact and or makes the tackle when Xavier Townsend gets the football. That's the bottom line. If you make the first guy miss, regardless of the skill position, there's a place for you in Division I. And that's what he does. And he's got speed. And this is a track kid. Not the biggest guy, but the way Iowa State is going to play football, he's with Rocco Becht. It's going to be with Gaines and some of these other guys from Tampa. Look out. He has chemistry with those guys anyway. They've all known each other a long time growing up here in Tampa. He's got a chance to do some serious things. And like a few other kids on this list, like a Terrell Crosby, for instance, don't punt him the football. Kick it away. Kick it out of bounds. Swallow your pride. Don't do it. Don't kick it to him. He's that guy that will make you pay. A lot of teams will be stupid, though. You watch. He's going to score touchdowns in the Big 12 because college coaches are knuckleheads sometimes and just won't swallow their pride. Xavier Townsend's a great kid, by the way. Really respect him as a person. The next player is Mr. Williams. He is from Lakeland Christian, and he's kind of a do-it-all player. It's hard to define what he's like when he hits somebody. They don't play in the biggest division. Lakeland Christian's a smaller school. Idris is very athletic, very strong, very stout. But maybe the most important aspect of those things is he just wants to lay a lick on somebody. He had a couple of the biggest hits I saw last year. It was opening night. They were playing John Paul II from Tallahassee, and they destroyed him 50-0. And the reason that he stood out is he wouldn't come from the backside like he was playing safety, come all the way across the field. There'd be a sweep, and he'd find a way to get to the football. Speed is not a problem. The only other question with him is position, because he can play running back. He's about 6 foot, 6'1", 180, give or take. I don't know if I'd want to take him out of safety, but you're getting the ball with that physicality and that speed. That's not a bad idea either. The only problem for me and other scouts, he's not always playing against top-notch competition at the skill spot, so I'm not sure what he's capable of. But great kid and good academics. He's kind of a fit for Lakeland Christian, and I expect him to play Division I football for somebody and make a lot of people look bad because they should have ranked him higher. That's a really good kid right there. Another kid that kind of came out of nowhere, and this is the last young man on my list, plays at Osceola High School in Kissimmee. That's just south of Orlando, for those of you that are curious. And that would be Jeremiah Wilson, safety / corner / receiver, kick returner, punt returner. He's another one of these kids that's multitude of positions. Happy-go-lucky, always got a smile on his face, just enjoys playing football. Another young man that played for Certified Dogs 7-on-7 and athletic. When I first saw him in February, no offers. He had a really, really good day that day. Tweeted about him, talked about him, along with myself and a few other guys. We reached out to people. He got 3 offers that week, including a Power 5 offer from Arizona. He hasn't looked back. He's got several more offers and has since committed to Syracuse University. This is a kid that just makes big plays. You can play him at corner or you can play him at safety. He'll find the football. That I saw from numerous times of seeing his kid play. And quite frankly, I'm not surprised that he ended up in Power 5 because I watched him for like one game and I was pretty sure watched him in the second game and it was consistent. I'm like, okay, what's the deal? Why doesn't he have more offers? They just went to the state championship and were the runner-up. What am I missing? It was kind of weird. Not a bad kid, very nice, very polite, good in an interview. All of those things about Wilson stood out. So anyway, that's going to wrap it up. For those of you that wonder, there's several other kids that could have been on this list, and I'm not negating that point. It's been very difficult to do it because of COVID. Quite frankly, I went out and saw more people than anybody else in Central Florida, and the reason for that is just because I did it because I wanted to. I didn't let COVID get in my way. I watched kids literally on sandwatch play, throw, workout, go watch them lift, everything. Didn't matter if it was a sanctioned event or not, you can still evaluate. Had college coaches reaching out to me saying, hey, you got more videos. People were following me and doing that. It's just, you got to go out and see them live. There's no other way around it. Live evaluations are the most important thing. Not only do you see the player's physical skill, you get to evaluate the young man and his personality. It cannot be stated enough. College programs need young men that are not going to be on the front page of the newspaper. You know what I mean by that, but let me clarify. For all the wrong reasons. Theft, fight, drugs, whatever it may be, don't be that guy. That's what they're looking for in prospects. When college coaches contact me or somebody like Chris Hayes from the Orlando Sentinel or Dwight Thomas from XOS, all these different scouts, it's very simple. They usually know who the good players are, but who's the good player that is a good young man? And then I can trust with a scholarship that is going to be here multiple years and not just flame out in 3 months because he's not going to class and acts like a buffoon. That's what they want. The list that I just presented, each and every one of these prospects is somebody that I think has a chance to be a good kid off the gridiron. And they're not all perfect students. Some of the kids I know aren't perfect, but there's a chance at least. And most of the kids that I talked about are elite in terms of personality. And that's very important. So if you want to win, you got to recruit kids that are going to represent your institution at a high level. And that's what this Central Florida list for the class of 22 is about. Once again, my name is Brian Smith. I am the publisher at Inside the Knights, and it's been a lot of fun to do what I do covering the Knights, but I do branch out with this and just talk about all the prospects because I am blessed to get to scout so many kids. And, I'm part of Fan Nation, which is part of the umbrella underneath Sports Illustrated. So we have a lot of direction we can go. I'll scout Georgia some this year as well. I love the Georgia kids, especially South Georgia kids. Great environment. I'm going to go to a couple games there. Make sure you check out my YouTube channel. I've got a lot of different things coming over the next several months. We're into football season, and just over a week, we're going to really have a lot of action again, and it's fun. It's just fun to scout kids. I can add to this list almost immediately. The 20th of August, I believe, is when most teams play. I think a few play on the 19th, but football is here. I really enjoy it, and I hope you check it out. And the thing scrolling across the bottom there, that is the site that I'm on. That is Inside the Knights. I am the publisher. If you're interested in anything UCF, that's the place you should go. I'm Brian Smith signing off. Hope everybody enjoys.